Welcome, everyone. We're going to be promptly starting this at 2, but we will allow you all roughly about 30 seconds so till we get started, and we'll get this show on the road. And how about you all? Rumor has it we're going to have a pretty decent attendance here, so it seems like it is the season, apparently, or apparently there might be some elections coming up. Anyways, hopefully we'll have some great answers for you, and we'll get this show on the road in a minute. While folks are filtering in here, we will just a couple quick things. The purpose of today's webinar is basically to provide information and education on Arizona's current political climate that is unbiased and data-driven. This event is brought to you by the Flynn Foundation, their CivEx vertical, and I just wanted to say a big shout out to them, thank them for hosting this event so I could share a bunch of data and insights into Arizona's election, and hopefully y'all can make a little bit more sense of all the stuff that's flying around right now, because there's a lot. And a quick note, Flynn did not commission this poll or the research. They are just facilitating this topic or discussion. And last quick note too, before we kick off, we're save your questions until the end, and feel free to drop them in at any point in the Zoom bar, not the chat, that's gonna be disabled. In the Zoom bar, there's like a little question tab there. You can go ahead and select, and we'll answer as many questions as you can at the end of the webinar. And with that said, I don't know about you all, time is the most finite resource out there, so let's get into it. All right, first, we're gonna spend barely a minute or so here, and then we're gonna get all the stuff you came for. For those who haven't had the pleasure presenting to you yet, my name is Mike Noble. I'm the CEO and founder of Noble Predictive Insights. We're the preeminent kind of nonpartisan public opinion polling, market research, predictive analytics firm in the Southwest. Our mission is to elevate the world around us by empowering decision makers with digestible data and actionable insights that translate to data-based solutions. And at the core, we work to bridge the gap between research and strategy by customizing each strategic approach with a research plan with a hyper focus on impact and being true partners with our clients. And we have a lot of pride in what we do. It's never one size fit all, and everything's tailored specific to our clients and ultimately their objectives. And we do a lot of work in the government sector, such as so we work a lot on behalf of the people. Department of Education, Department of Health Services, lobbying groups, special interest groups, government affairs. I mean, you name it. A lot of folks, everything. But we do not do Republican or Democrat races. Again, we're like the ESPN of politics. We're close, we're adjacent, but we're not fighting for the red or blue team, because if we were, we'd be partisans, and we're not loyal to either team. We are loyal to the truth and accuracy, and that's what we're shooting for. And we're in 2023 named 5,000 fastest growing company, and also ranked actually #1 in the Southwest region last cycle for accuracy, number 11 overall in the country, and we were in the top 5 for lowest average bias, meaning our number was closest to the truth via 538. Okay, enough about us. Let's get to the good stuff here. So what I have prepared for you all today, these are going to be our topics, and we're going to hit a lot of the key areas, frankly, for you all. So we're really excited to have you all here. Thanks again for making time regarding this event. And so let's get into it. So first off, Arizona, I don't know about you all, 5 years ago, it wasn't so busy or crazy as it is right now. It's almost like a lot can change in 5 years. And I know Arizona has changed a bit, but again, using the power of leveraging data and trying to make this very digestible, to kind of show you just from a top-down view of Arizona's shift from that ruby red Republican stronghold, which we were 5 years ago, to a national battleground swing state, which we are unequivocally, we are in that category now. So first off, let's look at this. This was Arizona of how it looked prior to 2018 election. So before the 2018 election, here's top down, you get your statewide up there, CorpCom bottom middle, Congress are your triangles, to the right's your state house, and then your state senate on the bottom left. And basically notice, try to look for the colors, because there's really just the red team and blue team, because last I checked, we don't have any independents currently elected in offices. So you don't see any yellow or purples out there. It's really red or blue. And you see Republicans had every single statewide office and pretty good advantages in most areas. However, 5 years later, We have, seen some changes here. This is what the state looks like now from a top-down view. And you notice that Democrats have really made a lot of progress, and Republicans have slipped in that balance of power. And frankly, the only place that Republicans gained last time was actually in the U.S. House, which what's interesting is it was actually primarily due to redistricting. So it's a little thing that happens every 10 years where they're going to redraw the lines or kind of change the rules or the boundaries of the game. And frankly, that helped them get another seat. Other than that, Democrats have really made a lot of ground, and things are really competitive right now here in the state. So that's what it was pre-post. So all right, things have changed a bit. Okay, Arizona, we are ground zero in 2024, and it's not just saying it. Let me tell you, it's true. Well, first off, we'll start with this. If you want to know if we're competitive or not, follow the money. And so when we look at the map right now, so this is political broadcast spending projections, across the country. And political broadcast spending, what does that encompass? That's your connected TV, radio, broadcast, and other forms of broadcast communication. So not direct mail, not digital, not some of these other ones, or telephone stuff like that. So broadcast. And you look at, compared to, they're spending money in states that are competitive. So if you look at states like Idaho, $6 million, not a lot. Arizona is literally is number 2 in the country for projected broadcast spend. The only place higher is actually our nemesis to the west in California at 1.2 billion. But frankly, a lot of that's being driven by the open Democratic Senate seat for Senator the late Senator Dianne Feinstein. And so there's a lot of money being spent there, but mainly on the primary side. And their cost to buy media there is about triple than what it is here in Arizona. So not only are we seeing $820 million projected spend, it's a 64% increase from the last cycle, which was a record-breaking number we had last cycle. So we're expected to break that yet again of where the spend is happening. And arguably, and so if you're really into politics, you're going to love this. Arizonans arguably are going to see the most political ads than anyone else in the country. So if you're into politics, you'll love it. If not, I apologize in advance. Unplug your phone, put up your do not solicit sign, and you will be okay. So let's look at why. Why is it competitive? So one, from a money standpoint, but also the road to the White House may very well lead through Arizona. When you look at the map right now, this is kind of the battle. Remember, it's not about the popular vote. It's about the Electoral College is ultimately who becomes president. So you hear that term a lot, the road to 270, because again, that's the magic number you have to have. And since the calculus has changed, since Florida has kind of lurched to the right, which used to be a perennial kind of toss-up state in their 30 electoral votes, it's changed kind of the calculus. And you notice all the states in tan colored there, those are the current toss-up or kind of the battleground that are probably ultimately going to decide the election. So Arizona, Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Georgia. And based on all the top forecasters, every single one has Arizona marked as a toss-up when it comes to the presidential race. Remember, Biden was the first one to win Arizona since Bill Clinton, and he didn't win by much. There's not a lot of votes. So, all right, that's competitive. So that's one point that's driving it. And then also a control for the upper chamber in Washington. Currently, Democrats have a narrow edge when it comes to it. But currently, the Senate map, remember, Senate seats are 6-year terms. So unlike Arizona, where we're experiencing our 5th U.S. Senate election in a row, they're not up every cycle. So all the states grayed out. They don't have a U.S. Senate seat up. So basically, where the map is setting, it's currently a little bit more advantageous in Republicans than Democrats. The seats they have up are just safer areas where Democrats have a little more places to protect. And there's not as many opportunities to really go on offense. Really, the key toss-ups are Ohio, Montana, and Arizona. And about a few months ago, everyone had Arizona marked as a toss-up. But due to recent campaign finance reports and the 1864 abortion law that came, we saw that basically Arizona, they've moved it a little bit to lean Democrat right now. And frankly, in my opinion, if I had to forecast this race as of right now, and that can change, I would say it kind of leans Democrat as well, based on the numbers and indicators I've seen. So we're competitive there. Also, we're competitive down at the local level. So here's a picture of the control of the state legislature from kind of a top-down view. You have House Democrats and Republicans in your dark lines up top. Your bottom lines are your Senate Republicans and Democrats. And GOP has always historically kind of had a pretty wide or decent advantage, but it's really started to come down to a razor's edge that we've seen. And now the GOP just has a two-seat advantage in the House and in the Senate. So it's really close. And again, imagine if, for example, the way things have been in Arizona, but let's say Democrats get one of these chambers, or let's say they get both. Remember, they have an incumbent governor that's a Democrat for 2 years. You could see things change a lot. So again, it's really competitive and important. So, all right, battle for legislature is a big deal. Here's the thing: there's 30 legislative districts, right? Of our 30 legislative districts, we have 2 members in the House, one in the Senate. And so, but I'm going to tell you, of the 30, here are the 6 that you need to watch based on the data. These are the battlegrounds where ultimately the majority is going to be decided. So here's the first 3, which you have District 13 on the left. Again, you have the current composition of the House, whether it's all D, all R, is it split? And then who's sitting in the Senate seat. And then what was by the last presidential election, what was that, advantage, who carried it, Biden or Trump? If we start off left to right, we're going to start with District 13 on the left, which is kind of in that Chandler area. And basically, you think Republican, but it's moved a little bit D, especially there in the suburbs. Because remember, what's also down over there is that, like the Intel plant, for example. And so that district voted heavy for Hobbs last cycle, and it has the largest composition of college degree or higher education than any other legislative district in the state. And as we know, college educated have kind of moved to Democrats recently because there's been a big coalition mix or shakeup between Democrats and Republicans, where more non-college educated are moving a bit more to the GOP. And basically, it's a big pickup opportunity for the Democrats in that district. Then we have District 2 in the middle there, which is Outer Ring exurbs, right, located in the Paradise Valley, North Phoenix area. And it's one of the best pickup opportunities for the GOP, given the working class white vote there. So opportunity for the GOP there. And then District 4 on the right, while it's majority white and majority college educated, maybe the biggest worry on the map if the GOP want to hold on the House. All right, what are the next 3? Again, make sure you mark these down. And so there's one more in Maricopa, then there's 2 that kind of stretch to Pima, down to Pima County. So on your left there, we have LD9, which straddles over West Mesa and East Tempe area. It's one of the most competitive seats where Dems fully own the House and Senate seats, but it has a significant Latino population. And it's also, but what's interesting is there's an opportunity for the GOP to pick it up with the right candidate, i.e., probably a more candidates are essentially like products. And so again, having more of, let's say, an Hispanic candidate would do very well in that district. So that one is a potential pickup for the GOP, but it really depends. Can they get the right candidate out of the primary for it? That will be a big decider of that. And then District 17 in the middle, currently it's a reach for Democrats. It's pretty red, but not highly diverse or in those key suburban Phoenix areas. Because again, suburbs have kind of shifted a little bit to Democrats. And so, where Democrats do pretty well, but it's possible for them in District 17. And then District 16 on the right there, which is a very working class GOP seat, barely majority white. The fact that the GOP is doing as well as they are, here is a kind of a sign of their broad populist appeal, because the GOP of old, the party you remember, it's not the same party it's today. Whether you like it or not, it is the current reality. And again, it is going more the populist route than it has gone previously. So there. And next is, rumor has it, I guess there's some ballot initiatives. This is like one of the most common questions I've been getting a lot lately. Is like, all right, what do you got for the ballot initiatives? What are the numbers, etc.? And my answer is this. Great question. We're not too sure. There's only 6 measures that are currently confirmed on the ballot, and there's 38 potential measures that are either being tossed around that potentially referred from the state legislature, like the recent one we found out about the whole border security measure they're looking to refer, to other measures that you know about or heard about, such as like the pro-choice group that's out there, basically out there collecting signatures right now. Here's the reality. The signature deadline is not till July 3rd. So this is when signatures are due. And of course, legislative sessions is still going on. So, potential referrals. And basically, there's just a lot in the up in the air as of right now. And so not only the signature deadline is July 3rd, but also you're going to have roughly about 2 weeks about legal challenges, because we've seen before people have had initiatives, they've had all the signatures, we're expecting beyond, and they didn't check a box on the legal. And I'm not a lawyer, I leave that to them. So basically, you're really not going to have clarity on the ballot initiatives till mid July. But what is interesting is that instead of getting a voter pamphlet this year, if a lot of these make it on, you're going to be getting a voter phone book in the mail, which is going to be wild. But these are currently the 6 confirmed measures that we know about, at least as of right now, definitively, which vary from criminal justice to election reform and taxation. So I have the name of it and then description on the right. So again, we have a couple of items that are currently on here. Some are kind of wonky in the weeds items. Other ones, such as like require partisan primaries amendment to some of these other measures. So anyways, those are the 6 we have. But all right, so what about those 38? What kind of area? What can we know about them right now? Well, here you go. They're all over the board, frankly, of these 38 that are potentially going to be on there, of these potential measures that could change policies and laws this year. Anywhere from recreational drugs. I think there's some stuff talked around about, some in the healthcare space of pushing a law for or something on the ballot to make psychedelic drugs, used for medical purposes. Yeah, healthcare, abortion we know about, firearms. I mean, it's all over the board, frankly, of what could be on there. So stay tuned. We'll be able to give a good update once we're finalized and we know exactly what the heck's going on. If not, we're kind of shooting in the dark, and better to discuss this when we kind of know more. So anyways, we're competitive, a lot going on right now. Okay, so let's bring us up to the right now with voters. So what's the state of the state? The voter opinion regarding the current political environment in Arizona. Let's start off first. The big man himself, Joe Biden's job approval rating reached its 2-year high in more than, or its highest point in more than 2 years. And you see, we've been polling Arizona for some time, and also we can claim we have literally polled Arizona more than anybody else in the country. So I like to say we have a pretty good sense of public opinion and where it's trended over time. But Biden currently at his best point, he's still -10 overall. 44% approve of the job he's doing, 54% disapprove. So among those that have an opinion, what's that difference? Net is -10. I just want to explain to you what the net means, just because you'll see it probably later on. You can look at the numbers or save yourself. You can do a shortcut and just look at the net. Anyways, net -10. And what's interesting, though, is the trajectory of Biden's approval rating. It was really terrible back in April of 2023. He really bottomed out at that point, but he has been steadily rising since then. So again, he's trending in the right direction. But again, we'll see as it ebbs and flows, because based on interest rates, based on gas prices, based on a lot of events we can't foresee, again, those will impact kind of voter sentiment. Next is, all right, overall, the trajectory of Arizona's electorate, are they looking at Arizona pessimistically or with optimism, right? And so voters are still unhappy with the direction the state's headed, but it's currently trending upwards. So it's currently voters are a little bit more pessimistic than optimistic, with a net -8, but it's currently trending upwards. So what does that mean? Basically, if you're folks in power, incumbency, if people think things are going the right track, they're usually happy with the status quo. If they think it's the wrong direction, they're maybe not as happy with the current status quo. So again, it matters if you're a challenger and incumbent. This is kind of impacts that a little bit more. Next is Governor Hobbs. How's she doing? How are voters feeling about her? And Arizona voters are beginning to come around to Governor Hobbs. And you see, look, we've tracked her approval since she has taken office. Here, and typically when you start off, you're in a bit of a honeymoon phase for your first 6-7 months, break even. But it's interesting, governing a battleground state is hard. Unlike doing a ruby red state or a blue state, you really just got to cater your base and you're okay. When you're in a battleground state, it's tough because no side has really a big innate advantage. So it's a much more of a challenge to govern. And what's interesting, even though she picked up some disapproval, she was able to trade out that disapproval with folks that approve of her. So basically kind of staying ahead of the curve. And currently she's at 51% approval, 38% disapproval. Her net is plus 13. To put in perspective, remember she's a Democrat. Well, so is Joe Biden. Joe Biden is negative 10 net on his job approval. Hobbs is plus 13, 23-point difference between the two. So pretty large. And again, voters will judge different folks differently. They don't just do it based on their party. So I hear rumor has it they're still in legislative session. And I guess the question is, will they be out before election day? I think all the lobbyists and government affairs folks hope so. But again, we look at, so what's the current approval with Hobbs, the governor, compared to the state legislature approval? So we have those there. Hobbs is in blue. The state legislature job approval among voters is in red. But Governor Hobbs is in a stronger position with voters than the state legislature. Why does that matter? I don't know if you remember when she first took office and had to get thrown right into a legislative session. She was getting a lot of pushback and a lot of guff from the Republican side of trying to push some things around, kind of, trying to strong arm a bit. And it's interesting, you notice this cycle around, you're not seeing that happen nearly as much. It's almost that they might know that she has a little bit more of the high ground when it comes to the people they're beholden to, which is the voters. All right. What are the issues that are going on? What do people care about? This is what we call a key indicator in election. The issue sets matter. They matter on how they're set up, because how that issue environment does play a pretty good impact on races. So let's say your issue is a big deal to your base voters, but the general electorate really doesn't care about it. Well, that's going to be tough compared if the shoe is on the other foot. But right now, inflation and immigration dominate the concerns of most Arizona voters. And you notice that there's two bars there. One is, hey, at the blue bar, that's where they just said you have to select your top issue and that's it. Okay. And then the other one is the blue bar, which is your top three. Personally, for me, I like the top three a little bit better because, again, you can have real close calls between, like, I don't know, let's say immigration and abortion, right? But you just have to pick one. But anyways, when you look at it, top three, it's by far and away immigration and inflation. But this is where it gets interesting, and this is where it matters. So for Republicans, the top issues are by far and away, by a landslide, immigration and inflation. And the same is true with the GOP's base demographics. So among Republicans, hands-on top two issues are important. And then again, key demographics to this respective base of voters. So Republicans, it's rural counties and high school level or some college education. And again, I'm going to show the same slide, but with Democrats and independents. So again, you're going to see the same theme. So I just want to lay out what you're looking at. But you notice inflation, immigration, but you're going to be basically seeing every Republican in primaries coming out with a border ad and really banging the drums on this issue and on inflation are really the two things that are really important with them. But an interesting caveat regarding Republicans, rural Republicans, immigration is actually higher than inflation, which inflation overall is usually number one for most groups right now, except for in rural counties, immigration is actually even more important. So especially rural Republicans running in rural areas, very much they're going to be all in on immigration. So, all right, what about the Democrats or the blue team? Democrats care about actually a lot of issues. They're pretty spread out. Healthcare, inflation, abortion, but also immigration, gun policies, climate change, and education. But unlike the GOP, there's really no runaway top issues for them. Democrat, they're really spread across these issues. And think about it. GOP's coalition, their demographic composition, they got less groups that they have to cater to compared to Democrats who have a lot more groups. They got the LGBTQ crowd, they have the African American crowd, they have Hispanic Latinos. Again, they have a lot of groups that they have to cater to, so they're kind of really spread out compared to the GOP. And now the tiebreaker: independents, the folks without a home in the political parties. Independents are split, but the question is, red team, blue team, which one do independents closer align with? And it's interesting is that independents, as of right now, are currently aligning issue set wise closer with the red team than the blue team, which are two of the GOP focuses, inflation, immigration, where the Dem issues, which is healthcare, climate, education, abortion, are important to them. They just have it a little higher. But you can even see it with these two key groups: moderates, so self-identified moderates, not conservative independents or liberal independents. So again, these Independents that are moderates. Inflation number one, immigration number two, but healthcare number three. And Hispanic Latinos, number one, inflation, number two, immigration. But what's interesting, unemployment. Of all these groups we just looked at, they're the only group that has unemployment in the top three. Remember, unemployment is at a pretty low number, right? And so it's interesting with Hispanic Latinos. So for folks out there these days, know that if you have Hispanic Latinos, try to work in unemployment. That's I think a key issue and a specific issue to them that they would find quite interesting and important. All right. So that's some of the state of the state. But wow, let's get into some of these election stuff. The ground is ripe for Republicans, but will they squander it? And by the way, I'm not anti-Republican and I'm not anti-Democrat. Honestly, it doesn't matter to me. Ultimately, for me, it's winning and losing, ultimately what's working, what's not. And again, based on the data, based on the numbers. So looking at this, that's just been the takeaway the last few times. Because remember, last cycle, it was unequivocally a good Republican environment. Republicans had all branches of power, President, Senate, Congress. They had all three branches. Typically, the party out of power. The question is they will win. The only thing is by how much, right? And the takeaway from that election was that Republicans underperformed and Democrats blunted a little bit, but part of it was kind of some of the type of candidates that were coming out of the primary. All right, laying that groundwork. At the moment, this is super interesting. At the moment, voters trust Republicans' hands slightly more than Democrats. So you've heard a lot of talk about folks about, all the Californians moving to Arizona and they're bringing their ideology, all that. All right, if that is, I know it's fun to say, but if that's true, why hasn't Democrat voter registration not been seeing a decent uptick? And also, how come when you ask the generic ballot, it's R+4? If they're bringing this stuff, all that, wouldn't you see that shifting, right? Anyways, I digress. Point is, it's currently leans to right. If you're in a color code Arizona, I wouldn't say we're purple, I'd say we're magenta, the lightest shade of red right now. And you look at these historically influential demographics, Republicans are doing slightly well with suburbanites, Maricopa County, but Hispanic Latinos is only D+10. Remember, Biden won Hispanic Latinos in Arizona by like 25 points. So to see it at D+10, and then independents 10 years ago used to be about R+7. Now it's D+2. So independents have moved a little bit away generically from the GOP. Remember, generic is just generically without injecting any personality. And for here, I know it's kind of pithy, but kind of big on digestible information. But this really sums up the issue that has been kind of going on of why Republicans have lost so much ground and why Democrats have really been having a lot of gains, frankly. So taking kind of JFK's quote and flipping it around is that Arizona Republican primary voters from 2020 presented, they choose to nominate unpopular candidates who make it difficult for us to win in a general election in this decade, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. And it's pithy, and I know people ideologically are pretty set in their sides. I say that it's just to make the point, and it's true. And here, let me show you a good example of this. So if you look at the U.S. Senate race, so probably the biggest down ticket race outside of obviously president, is that this is the state of the GOP primary, and then these two respective candidate images in that among Republicans. And Carrie Lake is more than 2-1 over Mark Lamb in the GOP Senate primary. So the election were held today. Lake's up by like 33 points, and she's already overpassed the 50% threshold. And what's more interesting, there's only 17% that are unsure. So there's not a lot of undecideds floating out there. And what's even crazier, and this is why the game has really changed in politics, it's not the old politics or the norms we used to, because you look at the candidate image among Republicans, is that you basically see that the image. So look at that image on the right. So this is just among Republicans. Lake and Lamb, they're pretty close to each other on image. Like they basically have roughly the same, like Lake's a little bit more favorable, but also a little bit more known among Republicans than Lamb, but she has a little bit more negatives than Lamb. He has less negatives. But it's interesting, with these two numbers based on their image among Republicans, this horse race should be way more competitive. It should absolutely be, but it's not. Lake is ahead by 33 points. Interesting. So now, when it comes to the general election, there's clearly one that's in a better position than the other. And again, this goes back to that RFK quote or whatever, is that the opinion of Republican U.S. Senate candidates among the general electorate. So not looking at the primary, because we're about 1/3 Republican, 1/3 Democrat, 1/3 independent, with Republicans with a slight edge, right? So again, we're like a third, a third, a third. So this group in the middle, And then when you move on to the general electorate, now we bring in not just the R's, we bring in the I's and the D's. This is currently the image that you have between. The difference between Lamb and Lake is that Lake is incredibly defined. I mean, she's not only incredibly defined, she's underwater. And a lot of that's driven by independents. Her favorability among independents is 60% unfavorable and roughly 30% favorable. So 2-to-1 negative with only 10% undecided. So very defined and not as great with that part. In a primary, yeah, she's incredibly strong. But Lamb looking a lot better and has a lot of room to define himself and grow. But again, just showing the difference between, and going back to that point of choosing who comes out of these primaries matter. But again, there's currently a fight going on in the GOP between kind of the old guard and the new. And you know what? They're in a bit of reorganization. They're going to work it out. But currently, those are kind of the reasons. They're some of the reasons that things are why they're running into some issues. All right. So remember the cinema shakeup? I'm glad she made a decision because I was asked, like, I'd be in the grocery store line and people would be like, hey, what's cinema going to do? I'm like, all right, like, I'm off the clock. Anyways, cinema shakeup. She finally decided. We get that. We know that. All right. Well, here's the thing. How did it impact the race? First off, look at the composition because it was so unique to see an independent candidate that was known, that had a bunch of money in the bank, like $10 million, that would possibly run for independent. And so she was polling at like 23% when we did the three-way race with Rubin and Lake, and then Cinema in there as well. And what did her group of folks, that coalition, what it looked like? It's probably what you expect. They're people that didn't like Biden. They didn't like Trump. They didn't like Lake. They didn't like, if Trump was barred from office, if convicted, and they're mainly independents or 55 and older. But it's kind of, you would expect. It's the people that are hyper-partisan, essentially. They're kind of people that are politically homeless a little bit. And so Cinema was very attractive. So again, looking at the composition or kind of looking at a persona of those folks looking at it via the data gives you an idea. So, all right, let's go now to that impact. So, but with Gallego, it's Gallego and Lake were the only choices. Cinema of voters landed up picking Gallego. So that 23%, how did that land up dispersing? And we were able to show that based on the numbers. Is that of that 23% that Cinema had, because with her jumping out, does that help or hurt Gallego, or does that help or hurt Lake? I don't know. Yeah, you have an A and a B, but now you put in this third variable. The question is, who are they helping or hurting? And that's always been the issue with the third party, at least to the major political parties. And you see that 12% of that vote that was for Cinema went to Rubin, 6% gravitated Lake, and then 5% said, you know what, I'm not sure. So it would let it be an advantage for that. But Lake basically, and this is why I think folks are kind of moving this race right now to lean D. And I think that's kind of why I think it's lean D right now. But again, this can absolutely change. So again, we'll see as the race goes on. There's a lot of time from now till November. But Lake has major ground to make up in the head-to-head matchup against Gallego. So again, 47 to 37, Gallego plus 10, 16% undecided. What's wild is ultimately that's 16%, not a big group, but they are ultimately going to decide who wins. And remember those historically influential demographics I showed before? Gallego's literally like outperforming in all of them. So suburbanites, Maricopa County, Hispanic, Latinos, independents. And I know you're like, Mike, you showed me the slide like 6 ago that showed that generic number. What if you could compare those? Well, here, I'll save you the time. And here's the thing. It's not a Republican problem. I think it's more of a candidate problem. So again, generic ballot, a generic, RD. But then you put in the personality, which everyone, each one's a different type of product, right? And so you look at the difference between like suburbanites, Maricopa County, Hispanic, Latino. The groups of voters who have played historically an influential role in deciding elections in Arizona are much more likely to prefer Republicans to lead the state. However, this doesn't translate to the current, in support of Kari Lake in the head-to-head matchup against Rubin Gallego. And again, I'm just reporting the numbers. And this is not my opinion. This is a voter's opinion and how we're interpreting it. And so what you can see pretty clearly, like with suburbanites, R plus 4, Rubin's plus 10, right? And then Maricopa County, R plus 3, Rubin 11. But the biggest thing, look at independents. D plus 2 generically, Gallego plus 18 once you inject the personalities. So again, it's interesting, and we'll see how the race goes. There's time, and we'll see how it plays out as we just, kind of be the ESPN of politics. And so now, we're not done yet. We got more competitive stuff. The House, or in this case, the federal House, so Congress. I already talked about legislature, state legislature before. Now let's look at Congress. We get it. It's close because Republicans have a very thin majority on the national level. Here's the reality. It's literally going to come down to about roughly 17 seats that are currently toss-ups. And the House is where the home or house is where the heart is. And you're seeing what these House races are shaping up to be another nail biter. So based on the current 2024 congressional generic ballot polling, we have Republicans have a slight edge. And then we have the 2022 or the midterm House results, where you see Republicans did a little bit better than Democrats in total votes. But now let's look at, okay, of our 9 congressional districts here, here's the ones that are competitive right now. And these are the 2 most competitive when it comes to the general election. If you're going to say most competitive in the primary is unequivocally CD8, where Debbie Lesko is retiring. So that's that Northwest Valley congressional district. She's retiring. And anyways, open seat, and there's a knockdown, drag-out fight among Republicans there. And then CD1, which is David Schweikert's district in Northeast Maricopa County, which is Fountain Hills, Cave Creek, North Scottsdale, and then some Phoenix exurbs, is that those are hands down the 2 biggest primary battles that are going on. But looking at the general electorate, District 1, which is Schweikert, and then District 6, which is Juan Ciscomani. And again, you see they both eked out barely wins in a pretty good midterm cycle, which is the midterm was R+7 was the advantage. So barely that. So here they both districts that Republicans that are going to be competitive again. These are also what the forecasters are showing. So again, the majority, there's 9 toss-ups right now on the Republican side where they have incumbents, and then Democrats have 8. So there's a total of 17 seats that are currently toss-ups. And where those goes, the majority. In Arizona, we got 2 of these toss-up districts with Juan and David. These are targeted. What I'm saying is you're going to see a ton of money coming into the state, and these are going to be big battles going on, and it might ultimately decide the control of the lower chamber in Washington. And also, okay, what are they going to need to do if they want these incumbents want to hold on? They basically need to have Biden crossover voters to win re-election. And science say that may be possible again. And we looked at the generic congressional ballot and the presidential preference. People are voting for Trump are pretty locked in for Trump. However, with Biden, folks aren't as locked in for Biden, right? They're saying, hey, 14% of those folks are saying, I'm going to vote for Joe Biden, are saying, hey, I'm going to vote for the Republican candidate generically. So again, they're going to need crossover vote to ultimately do it if they want to stay in there. If not, we will see a change of the guard. Great. So what about the presidential race in Arizona? Who's winning? Remember, Biden won last time. If the election was back in November, December of last year, Biden would have, had the edge. But here's the thing: times have changed since now until then. Biden's lead is gone, and Trump is currently in a strong position in battleground Arizona. You have the 2020 election results on the left. It was a nail biter. Here's the current Real Clear Politics polling average, which is basically the average of the current polls out. Trump currently sits with about a 5-point edge. But yeah, we'll see where it goes. All right, this one's just super interesting, I thought, and looks like I'm still on time for you all, so I'm happy about that. Also, a quick reminder for you all: if you had questions, things like that, you just drop it into on the the little Zoom bar that comes up. On that Zoom bar, there's a Q&A button on there. You hit that Q&A, drop your questions in there, and we'll see how many we can answer at the end. Moving on, Israel-Hamas war. Again, this thing's talked about. This is one of those issues that kind of popped up, right? And it was interesting, and we were just really curious about it because there was a lot of talks about who started, but there seems to be a lot of confusion out there in public opinion. And so most of Arizona voters blame Hamas for escalating the violence in the Middle East. And the question is, which side do you find to be primarily responsible for the escalation of violence in the Israel-Hamas war? Right? And so very few people are laying blame at the feet of either the Palestinian people or the Israeli people as a whole. But this is where it gets interesting. Remember this? Remember this back in end of October, November timeframe? You're seeing a lot of articles of this, but again, 24-hour news cycle, everything going on. 5-6 months ago might as well be an eternity, right? But the teens struggle to identify misinformation about Israel-Hamas conflict, the world's second social media war. TikTok pushes back on claims it fuels anti-Semitism, yada, yada, yada. All right, so these are things going on. The thing is, though, these things are talked about a ton, but no one's ever, to my knowledge, no one's able to put a data point to it. So the question is, does what you take in information? So let's say I'm a daily TikTok user compared to a voter that's not a daily TikTok user. Does it make an impact on their opinion, right? Like of this issue? And so, all right, looking at this, the black bar is all voters. So that's kind of like your baseline. What's the average? And then if it's teal, that's daily TikTok users. So people have daily interfacing with this. And if it's red, these people don't TikTok it up, right? And you notice, like, look at the middle bar, the middle chart right there. Hamas, a Palestinian militia group, they average 46%. They say, hey, they're the ones primarily responsible for escalating the violence. However, daily TikTok users, only 29% compared to 60% of non-TikTok users. And then look at just to the left of them, the Palestinian people, which from my viewing of it, it seems like they're the victims in all of this, right? Because the boss, the militia group, and then of course you have the people, right? 8% is the average. 18% of daily TikTok users think the Palestinian people are responsible for escalating, where 1% of non-TikTok users. What is the takeaway from that? Is that basically, just like if you're a health nut, you are what you eat, just like news or anything else, you are what you consume. But we're seeing signs of the social media, again, depending on platform stuff, may not be the best place to get maybe your news about certain items. But interesting, why are these opinions so different? What is a daily TikTok registered voter look like or tend to be persona wise, right? They tend to be young, 18 to 34. They tend to have less of a formal education. They tend to be people of color or non-white. And then they also happen to be more in suburban, urban areas, such as like Maricopa County, and tend to be female. But outside of Maricopa County, what all these demographics have in common, these are probably what we consider more less engaged or more low information voters compared to kind of more the hardcore voters out there. So again, opinions kind of changing there, right? But again, knowing that composition, interesting. All right, abortion question. Will abortion play a major role in 2024? Democrats seem to hope so. You know, I know this because last midterm, of all the ads ran by Democrats across the country, 33% of their ads ran were literally on the abortion message. It is hands down it is their number one wedge issue against Republicans because they are in a great spot on it. So again, you're going to be seen leaning heavy and hard into that. So, but what about voters? What do they think about what the stance should be since Roe v. Wade said, hey, that's not the law of the land. We're going to kick it down to states. You guys figure it out. Half of Arizona wants some type of abortion, but don't want to ban it outright. But here's the thing about the personal abortion stance or how people interpret it. Both the pro-choice and the pro-life sides of the abortion debate love to spin these numbers. So looking at this exact same chart, it's should be fully legal, should be completely illegal, or it's somewhere in the middle, right? Pro-lifers would say, read this: 60% do not want unrestricted access to abortion. But pro-choicers would read this same data: 90% do not want to ban abortion. Here's the thing, both are right, but whichever side wins the argument will be the first to correctly interpret what certain circumstances mean. So looking at, despite the attention-grabbing headline stuff, is that interesting, at least now the current polling, and this could change, is that only 1/4 of voters say that abortion is a top issue facing Arizona when they say of their top three. And then 1 in 10 say it is their top issue for voting. All right. So let's dig into that because, all right, so 10%, that 10%, especially, like, of all the things with, inflation's like number one for pretty much almost every demographic group. But yet, you got 10% saying, hey, abortion's like the thing over all these other items that are going on right now. So the voters that say abortion's that 10%, the question is, what is that composition of them? Are they tend to be more pro-lifers, pro-choicers? Are they kind of more in the middle? Like, where are they? They're much more likely to support unfettered access to abortion. So this group, this 10%, which again, 1 in 10 voters, doesn't seem like a lot, but again, this is like a really key issue for them, and they're definitely leaning on the abortion side. So again, it will likely have an impact. So political observers, we think that abortion will play a big role, which we just talked about. But here's the thing: do voters agree with that? Because we talked about their top issue. So, all right, do they agree on that? So we asked this question: how much of an impact does does a candidate's stance on abortion have on whether you vote for them or not? And what we find is that most voters say abortion will impact their vote to some degree. 36% very impactful, 25% somewhat. Typically take the top two box. That's kind of what, 61%. But here's the thing, the groups driving that very impactful, so the highest intensity level. What are those groups? Probably ones you'd assume: women and people, voters age 18 to 34. It's almost like, I don't know, the groups that are probably most directly impacted by this. And obviously liberal Democrats, but I think that's more of an ideological thing. But when you look at this, so again, when knowing, okay, forward, it is, but again, it really depends on who your audience is, but it's probably the audience you think it is. And again, think of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. People are going to determine ideology is fine and all, but when it comes to like something directly impacting them, they start to really take notice, and they will be engaging for them. So again, interesting. So what's also interesting is voters with an absolutist views on abortion give more weight to a candidate's views. Basically saying that, I know there's a lot going on in this chart, so I'll try to digest it for you, is that basically people that, say abortion should be legal under any circumstances, or the other side of it, which is abortion should be illegal in all circumstances. So the two kind of, all or nothing sides, is that, yeah, with those groups, yeah, they're pretty motivated. They find that pretty impactful, right? Like really strong. Look how many those dark greens are, a lot. But those folks in the middle, they're kind of a little bit more spread out on their impact. So again, those people with absolutist views just give more weight to that candidate's views. So again, basically these issues would be probably pretty important in the primary. It's still in the general, but again, you have to be a very targeted approach compared to a one size catch all. So abortion is going to play at least some role. 2024, we've established. Who's it going to help? Well, that's the question, right? So first off, looking at like what are these expectations of the winner of the 2024 election. But we wanted to kind of ask voters, kind of like, what are their perception? Again, we know what their policy positions are, right? But again, at the end of the day, what is the perceived perception among voters if they go in? So, if Trump wins or Biden wins, what do they expect to happen? Interesting. It's normal for voters to not know exactly where a candidate stands on each issue, but people lead busy lives, and some people don't see abortion as a top issue. We'd expect some of them to be unable to correctly figure out whether a candidate is pro-life or pro-choice. But currently, if they give, Trump wins, they got, perceived him saying he, probably supports a ban, or Biden, he wins, he would increase abortion access. It's interesting. Trump's position came out. He said, hey, it's to the states, but he's also changed his position many of times on this issue since he's been around. So interesting. And then while abortion is kind of typically a key one for Democrats, both parties kind of stand to reap potential benefits at the ballot box. And we can see that Trump is still somewhat undefined on this issue. And most Democrats think he'd ban all abortions, mention it, but the rest of the electorate is unsure. And that leaves room for Trump to distance himself from the most extreme abortion positions, if he chooses to do so, which we notice he's been starting to do. So anyways, abortion, it's just tough because especially, if inflation and cost of living and stuff wasn't as hot and heavy as it was, this would really, really, really be the dominant issue. But again, it's going to be a key one, hence why it is a key wedge issue. But I'd say overall, it probably definitely more so an advantage to Democrats than Republicans. And, this is fascinating. Oh my gosh, I got done 1 minute early because you know what? I have the most important slide of all the slides we just went through up next. And that is this one. Thank you all for attending this webinar. I know you're all incredibly busy, you have lives, etc., but we appreciate your interest, and big thank you to the Flynn Foundation, CivEx, for making this webinar possible by hosting it. And again, they did not commission the poll or anything like that. They just facilitated the item. So now, Jennifer, unless I put her to sleep from the Flynn Foundation, do we have any time for questions? Oh, she's awake.
We do have a few minutes for questions. So I think the first one in our field that I'm going to throw at you is, can you help us all kind of understand polling at a basic level? Like, who responds to the polls? How do you conduct them? Are there people at the malls asking questions with clipboards? Are they robocalls? Are you like, are the people who respond the same as the people who vote in primaries? Or are they more reflective of the general electorate? That sort of explain like I'm 5.
Correct. All right. If this was 10 years ago, this would be a really quick way to answer this question, because polling didn't change for like 6, 7 decades, because everyone had phones. participation was pretty high. And frankly, it was phone-based. It was like IVR and live callers. That was dominant. In the last 10 years, my gosh, things have changed. I think a lot of it's due to technology of how people interface it. Like, landline phones, everyone used to have them, right? Now you can't find anybody under 40 that has a landline. Also, there's just differences on how people engage with technology. So the modes of collection that are out there are like a phone based. You have live caller, IVR, robocalls, and then you have peer-to-peer text, which is where a live person administers the text, where you go back and forth. And then you have text online, where you get the text, click the link, take the survey online. All those forms are based off the voter file, so they're double opted in. So you know their vote history, so we know unequivocally. You pull and that's how a lot of campaigns, frankly, will do their polling, because they care about one thing: the people that are going to vote, essentially, right? That's their customer, for lack of a better term. And so for them, you have that, but it's changed. You've seen a lot of rise in opt-in panels. 10 years ago, they were laughed at. Now even Pew Research and Gallup use opt-in panels. And so opt-in panels, how do those work? Think of, if any of you guys engage with focus groups, right? Focus groups, which is a long proven qualitative research method. Focus groups, how they go, hey, you want to run a focus group? They usually have a list of 3,000 people on the list that have opted in to do it. And, they get paid a few bucks to come in and say their opinion, right? And that's basically what opt-in panels are used, or how they're used with that. So anyways, we're seeing a change. We're seeing a lot of mixing of modes, because here's the thing. Like, for example, modes like live caller used to be the gold standard. This is why the reason it's not is because, for example, trying to get folks, especially 35 or younger, to have them talk to a live human being, they would do anything but talk to a person. But they will text you or do something online with you all day. But they don't like human interaction, for whatever the case may be. Again, just a bit of generational difference. And so, anyways, long story short, methodology, it has become, basically, we've seen the biggest changes in the public opinion research than we have in the last decade. And also, at least for this research specifically for us, when we do that quarterly tracker, Arizona Public Opinion Pulse, or as you popped when you see in the news a bunch, we personally, since it's ours, we pay for it, no one commissions it. It's my thing, basically. It's my little pet project. I used to have it phone based. Personally, I switched over to opt-in panel because one, I could get like 1,000 sample size instead of 600, which I would much rather have a bigger sample size than to, which gives you far more mobility when you go down into your crosstabs. So hey, how are Republican suburban women doing it, or et cetera, which you need a bigger sample size, and you can have a lot more diversity of questions. Like, you can have people rank stuff, you can show images, you can show ads, and you get a longer runway on it. So there's kind of pros and cons to the modes, but personally, for this one, but frankly, for me as a primary researcher, it truly depends on the person's objective. So your objective is trying to win public office or something, or pass an initiative or whatever. Absolutely, I would do it more of like a campaign style, phone based, etc. But again, if you're kind of want to keep a pulse on things, etc., like for my purposes, personally, it made more sense to use that methodology. And my explanation is this to folks with methodology or different tools to use. At the end of the day, if I use a carrier pigeon attached with like a survey to it, it lands on your doorstep, you take it out, fill it, comes back, or whatever, right? There's all these modes you could basically technically do. I use that just for satire purposes, but you have all these modes you can use, right? And so with these modes, the reality is that as a primary researcher, we have to be able to replicate it, right? So if, let's say, that carrier pigeon, ridiculous scenario, let's say that's a thing again, but at the end of the day, are you right or not? And we look at a record, we only missed one election last cycle, and the cycle before that, we got everyone right. So, at the end of the day, you got to be responsible. Like, it's kind of like a chef. Do you tell a chef exactly what he needs to do, or do you let him use what ingredients or how he wants to go about it? Because at the end of the day, the final product and the result is ultimately what is the litmus test if it is credible or not. Sorry for the long answer, but I told you it's just more complicated now than it was 10 years ago. And we do not collect in person. Only time you do in person when you're dealing with a really, really niche audience, such as on tribal reservations, or just really, really hard groups to get, where you just can't get them over the airwaves. You got to literally hunt them down in person. So anyways.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm going to combine a couple of questions here, because I think they sort of get at the same thing. Do you have any, you showed some data around voters wanting healthcare and immigration sort of being in their top 3 issues of choice. Do you have any data around what exactly they want done regarding immigration, or what sorts of things, what are the top 3 issues within healthcare that they're concerned about?
Correct. Great question. So first off, like for immigration, right? Great question. So for example, when we didn't drill down to it in that specific survey, but I pull a lot. And so anyways, I can tell you definitively that when you look at Republicans, they very much look at it through a lens of border security. When you look at from Democrats, they're looking at it more through a lens of, getting across the border, right to work, kind of more from the immigration standpoint. So they're just, depending on which group you ask, it's just different. And then when you look at healthcare, of the items, healthcare is more predominantly so when the issue, because again, when you look at it overall, healthcare, the folks that care about it the most are the folks, what do you know, that use it the most? People that are seniors, especially the 65 plus crowd. Because I don't know about you, the cost for medication and stuff like that, you use compared to your 20s or 30s, your medical bills compared to when you get to like 65 plus, like I turned 40 next year. And again, as you get older, you just get more of it. So it's really more predominantly to them. And I think a bit more of it's more to cost portions is usually more so what they drive to that I've seen, at least in the data.
Okay. And do you have any data around or any sort of thoughts around what the projected turnout for the primary in general might be? Or
I keep your well, so this is the thing about turnout, right? Anyone that can predict turnout this far out, there's no point for any of us to be around, right? And is that because again, a lot of things can change, depends on interest rates, depends on a lot of factors, basically. And basically, when you're flying, I take this from Ann Seltzer, who's the queen of Iowa polling and the cycle. Everyone had, I think, Biden ahead by 6 over there, and then she came out with Trump plus 6. She's a total outlier, right? But she's Ann Seltzer. She's a legend, been around forever. Guess what? Everybody was wrong. She was right. And in the post takeaway, what she said is, hey, for turnout, why she got it right and they didn't, because half the battle of getting elections right is just truly turnout, right? Because you got to have, and again, remember, polling is only good if it is representative of your audience. So making sure you get the right share of groups of people and not too much of like college educated or non-college or too many females or males, whatever. And what she said was that, it's like flying a plane. You're looking at all these different indicators, et cetera, and then we're going to land the plane. That's when you kind of dial it in. And frankly, that's my approach to it, is kind of watching all the indicators and then calling out what the turnout's going to be, because I've just experienced trying to call it out this early. Things change, but then, you don't want to start moving the goalposts for people, right? So the thing is kind of try to look at it with an unbiased lens, because when you're projecting turnout, you're making an assumption of what it's going to be at that point. So I would say that turnout, here's the thing. Last presidential election, it was 79.8 or 80% turnout. 8 in 10 people turned out, right? Which is a massive amount. And here's the thing, it's presidential show. And you look at our Arizona, we are competitive, literally up and down the ticket from presidential on down, like ballot initiatives, you name it. Like you're not gonna be able to get away. Like Arizona's relevance of like what happens here, not only direction of the state, whether we go left or right, but also who's the balance of power in Washington. Like Arizonans, we may ultimately decide that as voters, right? So me personally, I think turnout's going to be roughly around the same. It's going to be high, and I don't see how it couldn't, because let's say they don't like your choices, but again, it's not the only thing on the ballot. There's going to be the abortion stuff. There's going to be all this other stuff that's going to be on there. So like, I have a hard time seeing turnout being depressed this time, as much as people talking about, and that's just what I've been seeing or what my thoughts are at this moment.
Right. Well, there are a lot more really great questions in the Q&A, but we're at 3 o'clock. So we'll save those questions. I don't know if you want copies of them or not, but we will post everything. We'll post the slide deck on our website, and a recording of this video will be up sometime tomorrow. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for your time. Have a great rest of your week.